You also might like to go on speaker view so that you can see me and the shared screen when I share the screen. So I'm going to share the screen now. But before I do, just a little context here. I've got to put the timer on because I can only do 10 minutes. When I'm not leading this community, I host one-to-one brand discovery workshops and have been in branding and marketing for over 20 years. And it's an opportunity for me to work with people who feel they need to slightly shift the perception of either themselves or their business. And when I'm doing that, we have a brand board that we work through, and I'm going to use that as the basis for this little 10-minute spot on how to create a remarkable brand. So I'm going to share the screen. Don't worry if you can't see it in too much detail, because I'll be zooming in and out while we're doing this. So we are recording, right? Share. Okay, I hope you can see that. Akin, do shout if not. There we go. So this is an example of a brand discovery workshop sheet that I've used when I'm doing a workshop. This is for a very early stage startup who, oh, somebody.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. So this is the worksheet that we use when we do that, and this is normally done over 2 90-minute sessions. I'm going to mute you, Megan. Sorry to be rude. Oh, you've done it. Perfect. Okay. And it's broken down into these sections. Now, the thinking behind this is that in order to be noticed, remembered, and talked about a little bit more, we now need to be different, better, and remarkable in the minds of the people who we'd like to work with. If you're not different, you're invisible these days. If you're not better, the people we could work with will be promiscuous and might well work with other people if they don't believe you're the best. And remarkable is a characteristic of a person or a business, in my mind, that has people talking about them outside a referral. It's all very well to say, do you know any good copywriters who work in the arts sector, and then recommend somebody? That's great. But what we really want people to be doing is saying things like, have you seen what Vicky Lovegrove is doing? Or so it's a kind of a buzz. There you go. You get a plug, you see, Vicky. It's great. So let me take you through this. We won't have time to go into huge amounts of detail, but if anyone would like a one-to-one with me for 15 minutes to talk about this and anything else, there's a link on the website if you'd like to book that, so that I can get to know you a bit better. So let's zoom in on the first section here. I'm assuming you can all see this. So we start with the W's. What is it that you're doing? Who are you doing it for? Why are you doing it? Where are you doing it? And when, as in, at what stage are you in the development of your career or business? The what is important because people need to be reassured that they understand what you're doing. Anne and I had a session on this the other day, so it's really important. I don't know about you, but if I see a truck driving down the road and it says JJ Smith and Sons and a phone number and nothing else, I'm tempted to throw rocks, because you need to give me a clue here. Are you an undertaker or a gardener? So it's important that people understand what it is you're doing. The trick is to twist that slightly so you're perceived as slightly different. For example, I've worked with an osteopath. His problem is that 50% of the people he talks to don't know what an osteopath does. So we've now described him as a preventative osteopath, which gives people the opportunity to ask questions without giving away the fact that they don't know what he does. So there's normally an operator word. So my wife Jo is an accountant, but if I introduce her, I introduce her as a forensic accountant, which turns her into Sherlock Holmes. So have a think about how you could describe yourself or your business. I met an accountant who introduced herself to me. I said, what do you do? And she said, I count other people's money. And we had a wonderful conversation because it started with a smile and a laugh. So have a little think about how you can introduce yourself a little bit differently, but retaining the reassurance that people understand what it is you do. So we then buzz through, who is it for? If I have a chance, unlikely, I might talk about it in the after party, but I have a concept called minimalist marketing, which is both terrifying and liberating. It teaches you to focus your resources where it's going to have the biggest impact in your outreach, business development, or career development. So the phrase to remember and perhaps scribble down is, what is my smallest viable audience? So that's worth doing. I won't go into more of the W's because there's more fun in this, but I'll share this. We then go into a bit more detail about what does your ideal customer look like. And we study these boxes and put the answers in. So this was the response for the guys at Artworks. It helps, and while we're doing that, we capture words and ideas up here on this board. And it's kind of like a mood board area where we drop ideas during the course of the workshop. But where it gets really good fun is down here. And I'll be doing this. Matt, you shouldn't really look at this in too much detail because we'll be doing this together next week. So the idea here is, having done the W's, this is what we are, this is who we do it for, this is why we do it, and having profiled our ideal customer, or the champagne referral, as I call it, how do we want that person or those people to perceive us, if it's an individual, or my business? And the fun bit here is to ask yourself, if my brand was a famous person, who would it be? And this is remarkably illuminating, this process. It might sound a little bit odd, but it's great fun. So Artworks want to be perceived as Alexander McQueen in his 40s, wearing crimson, driving a Maserati, excellent at Trivial Pursuit, listens to Hans Zimmer whenever possible, is probably living in Monaco. Publication is Coveted, which is an interior design publication. Grand Designs for the TV show, Liberty for the high street store, Animal is Snow Leopard, the sport is Polo, and the beverage is Veuve Clicquot, movie Moulin Rouge, and the body part Hands. The body part can get a bit fun. So what we've done in that very brief exercise is capture the personality that we want other people to see by associating ourselves or our business with something that they would recognize. And you'd be amazed at how these vary. We've had Margaret Thatcher in there, which was odd before. It's great fun. Then we move on to what we call the brand story. And my apologies to people who know all this already, but the idea here is to decide who plays which role. So I always give the example of Star Wars. So in Star Wars, the hero is Luke Skywalker. The challenge is to blow up the Death Star. The villain is Darth Vader, and the guide is perhaps Obi-Wan Kenobi or even Yoda. And the outcome is the defeat of the evil empire. So what does your story look like if you associate it with that sort of pathway? The key here is that you're not the hero. Your prospective customer is the hero. He or she will have a challenge that you can help with. There's probably a villain, and the villain isn't always a person. It might be a scenario, some kind of restriction, and then you're the guide. So if you're providing a service, you're the guide helping your hero achieve that outcome. And then we start looking at this, which is what we call the brand tree. So for Artworks, I came up with the name for them. It's often difficult with startups now because you've got to be able to get the .com. The brand essence is an interesting one. The brand essence is not normally seen by people. So for example, Nike's brand essence is authentic athletic performance, but that's an internal value. You won't see it on a box. That gets given to the marketing team, who come up with Just Do It, and the designers who create a tick, and the job's done. So they're normally 3 words, and they tend to be operator words. So for example, I once did a similar exercise for a yoga apparel company, and they needed 3 words, and they each had a job to do. 1 word had to imply that it was yoga related. 1 word had to imply that it was fashion related, and 1 word had to imply that it was the whole business was driven by this wonderful woman who seemed to glide about on wheels with 4 children running her own business. She was the star of the show for that company. So the brand essence for that became stylish serenity personified. So, and each of those words did the job it needed to. Stylish implies that it's fashion, serenity was implying yoga, and personified linked the whole thing to Lucy, who was the yoga expert. So that's the brand essence, 3 little words. We often try and go for a bit of clarity, a bit of brevity, and a bit of wit in that. And sometimes that becomes the strap line, but not necessarily. We then do the Ron Seal statement, as we say, really, this is the opportunity for you to create a sentence that solves the what problem. Artworks is a leading source of unique works of art for interior designers and their clients. That's what they do. That's it in a nutshell. And then we try and adopt the hairpin technique, not to bombard people with things that we want them to remember until we're sure that that the penny has dropped at each stage of that process. It's kind of like a hairpin technique. And quite often, the less you say, the more they remember. We then extrapolate that so that we can have a bit what we call the brand description, which goes into a little bit more about what makes us special. I'm running over time, damn. So I'm going to speed up. And then we get to the different, better, and remarkable bits. What makes us different? What makes us better? And what makes us remarkable? Because that's the key to being noticed in the first place, remembered, and talked about. The other thing to bear in mind, and this is more for businesses than career branding, is that at any given time, it's been calculated that the percentage of people who you might reach out in a business development or marketing process who are A, able to afford what you offer, and B, want it, is about 3%. You could email 100 people and 3% of them would be in a position to accept what you're suggesting. So remaining recall is really, really important. There was another study done that suggested that 80% of sales or contracts or collaborations are confirmed between the 7th and the 12th interaction with somebody. So, and most people who are trying to develop business or get a job, or they stop at 2 or 3. So there's an awful lot of opportunity being left untapped. That often leads to an identifying characteristic. I was working with a coach recently, and we found that her point of differentiation, she's going to call herself a slow coach because she slows people down so that they can speed up in their business lives. So she now introduces herself as, I'm a slow coach. And now I defy anyone not to ask more questions when told that. So it works really well. So her identifying characteristic is slow. She can write it on her palm and give a 45-minute keynote from one word without notes, because the flow just comes from that central thought. And that gives us the opportunity to complete this kind of question. I hope you can see this. We believe the world is a better, this is for artworks. We believe the world is a better place when fine art finds a loving home. So we help the world's leading interior designers to avoid the mundane and ubiquitous and acquire quality fine art by finding, sourcing, and commissioning original work by emerging and established artists. So that's the we believe statement. It's a really good one to write. I'm going to leave you with one thought, which is something we played. There are a few games that we played during the workshop, the full workshop, one of which is, if Apple bought your business, what would they change? And that's really quite an interesting thought. Similarly, if Microsoft bought your business, what would they change? Because it's likely to be different. So I hope that's been of help. That's a crash course in brand discovery workshops. We have recorded, so we can make this available. And if you'd like a copy of this, a template copy of this brand worksheet as a PDF, please drop me a line and I'll be happy to send it. There we go. Done. I hope that was useful. So thank you, Jamie, for the round of applause. Excellent. Okay, let me stop sharing. And we'll come back and do some more networking. I should give you a chance to ask questions, actually. I know we can probably do this in the after party, but Maria, do come off mute and ask if you have a question.
Yeah, it's a very practical question. Would you be able to share the Miro link as well, or an interactive board to it?
And not the
Instead of
Miro
just
link, no, unfortunately.
Okay.
But
No
I can
problem.
certainly
It would
share.
be fun to do on our own.
It
That's
would be.
what I was thinking.
It's even more fun if you do it with me.
You're right. Sorry about that.
It tends to be something of a seance, that something really smart drops, but I'm afraid it doesn't happen when you're doing it on your own. I've seen that countless times. For those who are interested, when I'm doing this for a company, and I've done one recently for a £14 million game design studio, I normally charge £1,500 for those two 90-minute sessions. But for members of our community, for full members of our gang, it's only £500. And we record both sessions. You can get them transcribed. The brand board is completed and shared, and it effectively becomes the blueprint for how to describe yourself or your business in the future in a way that gets people engaging more frequently. So, any other questions?